I always thought my life with Clara was a masterpiece, a canvas painted with trust and quiet moments that felt eternal. We'd been married for 12 years, our home in Portland a sanctuary of shared dreams. Her pottery studio in the garage, my office lined with books on architecture. Clara's laugh, sharp and bright, was the rhythm of my days. But lately, her eyes wandered. Not to me, but to some distant horizon I couldn't see. It started subtly. Her phone buzzing at odd hours, her fingers dancing over the screen with a secrecy that stung. I'd ask, "Who's that?" And she'd say, "Just a client." Her voice too smooth, like she'd rehearsed it. I'm not a suspicious man. My work designing sustainable homes keeps me grounded, analytical. But Clara's pottery business had taken her to new circles. Art galleries, local influencers, people who glittered in ways I never did. She'd come home from exhibitions smelling of wine and strangers' cologne. Her stories vague. "Just networking," she'd say, slipping into bed, her back a wall between us. I wanted to believe her. I did. But doubt is a seed, and it was sprouting. One evening, I found her sketchbook, usually sacred, left open on the kitchen counter. Amid her usual designs, swirling vases, delicate bowls, was a drawing of a man's face, angular, intense. Not me. The lines were tender, obsessive, as if she'd traced him 100 times. My chest tightened. I didn't confront her. Instead, I started watching, cataloging the moments she thought I didn't see. The way she'd smile at her phone, the late-night errands that left her flushed. I wasn't ready to name it, but something was unraveling. I began to investigate, not with accusations but with quiet precision. I checked her calendar, noting names she mentioned. Elliot, a gallery owner, Mara, a curator, and Theo, a photographer whose Instagram was all brooding shadows and cryptic captions. Theo's name appeared most often, tied to events Clara attended without me. I didn't want to be this man, spying on his wife, but the sketchbook haunted me. Who was he? Why was she hiding him? By the third week, I was certain. Clara wasn't just drifting. She was building a life I wasn't part of. The realization wasn't loud or explosive. It was a slow bleed, a truth I couldn't unsee. I loved her still, but love doesn't blind you to betrayal. I needed proof, not for confrontation but for clarity. I needed to know how far she'd gone and with whom. The architect in me craved structure, a plan to rebuild or destroy what was left of us. Clara's routine became my map. She'd leave for meetings at galleries, her perfume lingering like a taunt. I started cross-referencing her stories. She'd say she was at the Blue Heron Gallery, but her phone's location, carelessly left on, pinned her at a loft downtown, a place tied to Theo's photography studio. I didn't hack her phone. That felt too low. But I used what she left open, like breadcrumbs to her secret world. Theo's name was everywhere now, woven into her texts, her emails, even a handwritten note tucked in her purse. Theo, 8 p.m., rooftop. My stomach churned, but I kept silent, building my case. I met Theo once, at a gallery opening Clara insisted I attend. He was lean, all sharp edges and quiet intensity, his eyes lingering on Clara too long. She introduced him as a collaborator. But their ease, the way her hand brushed his arm, felt like a language I didn't speak. I shook his hand, my grip firm, searching his face for guilt. He smiled, oblivious or maybe mocking. Couldn't tell. Back home, Clara was radiant, talking about art and light, but her words were a performance. I nodded, playing the devoted husband, while my mind dissected every gesture. I started following her discreetly. One night, she said she was meeting Mara at a cafe. I drove by, parking across the street. Through the window, I saw her with Theo, their heads close, her laugh spilling out like it used to for me. They weren't touching, but the air between them was alive, intimate. My hands shook on the steering wheel. This wasn't a fling, it was something deeper, a betrayal of the soul, not just the body. She was giving him pieces of herself she'd stopped sharing with me. I dug deeper, accessing public records, social media, anything to understand Theo. He was 35, single, a rising star in Portland's art scene. His posts were cryptic, often tagged with Clara's work, her vases in his shoots, her name in his captions. Fans commented, "You two are magic together." Magic. The word burned. I found a photo of them at a rooftop event, her arm around his waist, his smile proprietary. The date matched her errand night. The evidence was piling up, but I needed more, not just for me, but for what I was starting to plan. I didn't confront her yet. Confrontation would scatter the truth, and I needed it whole. Instead, I mirrored her secrecy, pretending everything was fine. I cooked her favorite meals, asked about her day, listened to her half-truths. Each lie she told was a brick in the wall between us, but also a tool for me. I was designing something now, not a home but a reckoning. Clara thought she was the artist of her secrets, but I was drafting a blueprint for justice. The betrayal wasn't what I expected. I'd braced for stolen nights, hidden hotel rooms, but Clara's infidelity was stranger, more insidious. It was creative, woven into her art. I found her second Instagram account, private, under a pseudonym, Clay Siren. The posts were sensual, not explicit. Her hands shaping clay, her lips parted, captions like "molding my truth." The account followed only a few, including Theo. His comments were there, poetic, intimate. "You shape more than clay." My skin crawled. This wasn't just an affair. It was a performance, a shared art project that excluded me. I accessed her laptop when she was at a workshop. Her emails with Theo revealed their collaboration. A joint exhibit called Ephemeral Bonds, blending her pottery with his photography. The proposal described it as a study of fleeting connections, captured in clay and light. But the subtext was clear. Their connection was the exhibit's heart, private moments turned public, a betrayal disguised as art. One email from Theo read, "Our nights inspire me. You're my muse." Clara's reply, "You see me like no one else." I felt erased, my role as her husband reduced to a prop in their story. I attended one of their planning sessions, uninvited, claiming I wanted to support her. The gallery was dimly lit, filled with Portland's art crowd. Clara's vases stood on pedestals, Theo's photos, moody, abstract, hung beside them. I watched them work, their synergy palpable. She'd adjust a vase. He'd shift a light, their hands brushing, their smiles private. The crowd praised their chemistry, oblivious to the cost. I played the proud husband, but inside, I was cataloging their every move, their every word, for what was coming. The exhibit's theme of fleeting connections was a knife. Clara and I had built a life on permanence, our home, our vows. Now she was celebrating transience with him. I found a draft of their artist statement, saved on her laptop. We explore the beauty of moments that don't last, connections that burn bright and fade. It was a manifesto of her betrayal, a public declaration of what she'd chosen over me. The cruelty wasn't in physical acts but in this artistic intimacy, shared with strangers while I stood outside. I started planning my response, not with anger but with precision. Revenge, I decided, would match their betrayal, unconventional, public, and devastating. I wouldn't confront her yet. I needed their exhibit to launch, their art to be celebrated. Only then would I unveil my own creation. I began collecting more evidence. Screenshots, emails, even recordings of their gallery talks, where their words dripped with double meanings. My love for Clara was fading, replaced by a cold determination to reclaim my dignity. They thought they were untouchable, but I was building something they'd never see coming. Clara's world revolved around the exhibit now, and I let her believe I was oblivious. She'd come home late, her eyes alight with a passion I hadn't seen in years, talking about ephemeral bonds, as if it were her life's work. I nodded, asked questions, played the supportive husband while my resentment grew. Theo was her shadow, always there. In her stories, her phone, her art. I hated him, not for who he was but for what he represented. The theft of my wife's heart, repurposed into their shared creation. I deepened my investigation, crossing lines I never thought I would. I rented a small office space, a place to organize my findings away from home. On a corkboard, I pinned photos, timelines, and notes. Dates Clara was with Theo, locations, their public appearances. I hacked into the gallery's booking system, easier than I expected, and found their schedule. They'd rented the rooftop loft for private sessions, times that matched Clara's errands. I didn't need to imagine what happened there. Their art told the story. I attended another gallery event, this time anonymously, blending into the crowd. Clara and Theo were the stars, their chemistry intoxicating to everyone but me. She wore a dress I'd never seen, her laughter a melody for him. He spoke about their work, his voice low, possessive. Clara's hands create what my lens captures. The audience ate it up, but I saw the truth. A love letter to their betrayal, framed for all to see. I left early, my mind racing with ideas for revenge. My plan was taking shape, inspired by their own methods. They'd turned their affair into art. I'd turned their exposure into a spectacle. I contacted a local journalist, anonymously, feeding her tips about the exhibit's hidden narrative. I didn't reveal everything, just enough to spark curiosity. I also reached out to a rival gallery, hinting at a counter-exhibit that would steal their thunder. I wasn't sure of the details yet, but I knew it would be public, precise, and merciless. At home, Clara sensed nothing. She'd kiss me absently, her mind elsewhere. I stopped trying to win her back. My energy was for the reckoning. I began sketching my own art project, not with clay or light, but with truth. I'd use their own words, their emails, their captions, to build a narrative that would dismantle their fantasy. I wasn't angry anymore, just focused. Love had turned to strategy, and I was good at strategy. The architect in me thrived on this, designing not a home but a trap. Clara and Theo thought they were crafting a legacy, but I was crafting their downfall, and it would be as beautiful and cruel as their betrayal. Living with Clara was like inhabiting a house with cracked foundations. You see the flaws, but you walk carefully, pretending it's still home. I cooked breakfast, asked about her day, laughed at her stories, all while my office held the truth of her betrayal. She noticed nothing, her guilt buried under her excitement for the exhibit. "It's going to be big," she said one night, her eyes distant. "Theo thinks we could tour it nationally." Theo. His name was a splinter, but I smiled, said, "That's amazing, love." She didn't see the storm behind my eyes. I expanded my plan, weaving a web that would ensnare them both. I hired a private investigator, not for more evidence, I had enough, but to track their movements, to confirm their patterns. The investigator, a quiet woman named Diane, delivered photos. Clara and Theo on the rooftop, their silhouettes close. Clara leaving his studio at dawn. Diane didn't judge. She just handed me the files. "They're careless," she said. I nodded. Their carelessness was my advantage. I started building my counter-exhibit, a shadow to theirs. I rented a small gallery space under a false name, claiming it was for a community project. My concept was simple but brutal, a display of their art, but with the subtext exposed. I'd project their emails, their captions, their private moments, alongside Clara's vases and Theo's photos. The public would see ephemeral bonds for what it was, a love letter to infidelity. I worked late, designing the layout, choosing fonts, ensuring every detail was perfect. This wasn't revenge. It was justice, sculpted with the same care I'd once put into our home. I fed more tips to the journalist, who was now digging into Theo's past. She found rumors of other muses, other artists he'd collaborated with, then discarded. Clara wasn't special. She was just the latest. This hurt more than I expected, but it fueled me. I wanted her to see Theo's truth, not through my words but through the wreckage of their own creation. I also contacted a lawyer, quietly, to prepare for what might come after. I wasn't planning to leave Clara. Not yet, but I needed options. At home, Clara was oblivious, planning the exhibit's opening like a bride preparing for her wedding. She asked me to attend, and I agreed, my voice steady. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, and she smiled, believing me. But I wasn't there for her triumph. I was there for the moment my plan would unfold, when their art would become their undoing. The architect in me was calm, precise, every beam of my revenge in place. Clara and Theo thought they were untouchable, but I was ready to show them how fragile their world was. The opening was days away, and I was building toward a moment they'd never forget. The gallery was packed, the air thick with anticipation. I'd spent weeks preparing, every detail of my counter-exhibit meticulously planned. Clara and Theo were the darlings of Portland's art scene. Their ephemeral bonds exhibit the talk of the town. I stood in the shadows, my heart a furnace of rage and resolve. Tonight, their world would fracture. I'd secured a small space across the street, a pop-up gallery of my own. The walls were covered with their private correspondence, emails, texts, captions, projected in stark white light. Clara's sketches of Theo, her tender lines, were blown up, framed like masterpieces. Theo's photos, once abstract, now carried captions that screamed betrayal. My muse, my everything. I'd hacked their social media, pulling comments from their fans, unaware of the subtext. You two are soulmates, one wrote. Art and love intertwined. I printed these two, each a dagger to their narrative. The centerpiece was a video loop, a compilation of their rooftop meetings, stolen footage from a drone I'd hired. No sound, just visuals. Clara's hand on Theo's arm, their laughter, their unguarded glances. The intimacy was unmistakable, a silent film of infidelity. I'd edited it myself, every cut deliberate, every frame a wound. The crowd would see them not as artists but as conspirators, their ephemeral bonds a sham. I wore a suit, sharp, unassuming, my architect's eye for symmetry in my stance. When the doors opened, I stood by the entrance, handing out flyers that promised the truth behind the art. People took them, curious, their chatter a low hum. I watched their faces as they entered, their excitement shifting to confusion, then shock. Whispers spread like wildfire. Is this real? She's cheating? Theo's no saint either. Clara was there, radiant in a red dress, oblivious to the storm. Theo, in black, leaned close, whispering something that made her laugh. I caught it on my phone, another shard for my arsenal. Their ease, their arrogance fueled me. They thought themselves untouchable, their art a shield. But I designed this to dismantle them, to expose their core. The crowd moved through my gallery, their murmurs growing louder, sharper. I stayed near the video, watching their reactions. A woman gasped, her hand to her chest. A man shook his head, muttering, "Unbelievable." Clara and Theo were still mingling, but their smiles were strained now, their glances darting. They'd seen the flyers, I was sure. They knew something was wrong. I approached Clara first, my expression neutral. "Impressive work," I said, gesturing to her vases, their curves echoing her sketches. She beamed, thanking me, but her eyes flickered with unease. "You and Theo, you're close, aren't you?" I added, my tone light. Her face paled, just for a moment, before she recovered, laughing it off. "He's a dear friend," she said, but her voice cracked. Theo was next. I found him by his photos, his posture stiff. "Bold choices," I said, nodding at a print captioned, "For her." He smirked, all confidence. "Art demands truth," he said, as if he owned the word. I smiled thinly. "Truth is everything," I replied, and walked away, feeling the weight of my intent. The crowd's mood was shifting, curiosity turning to judgment. People whispered behind hands, their admiration souring. I overheard fragments. "Disgusting? How could she? Poor guy." My chest tightened, not with pain but with grim satisfaction. This was working. Their myth was unraveling. Clara and Theo huddled briefly, their heads close, their panic palpable. I sipped my wine, watching them fray. The architect in me savored the structure of their downfall, each reaction a beam in my design. The gallery's lights dimmed, my signal to act. I stepped to the center, raising a glass. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady. "Tonight, we celebrate art and truth." The crowd quieted, their eyes on me. I gestured to the walls, the projections, the flyers. Clara and Theo have given us ephemeral bonds, I said, but they've hidden its cost. I paused, letting the silence build. This is their real story. I pointed to the video, its loop relentless. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Clara froze, her face a mask of horror. Theo's jaw tightened, his charm useless now. I kept speaking, my words measured, each one a hammer. They've built their art on lies, I said. On my trust, my love. I held up a flyer, reading their words aloud. You see me like no one else. The crowd stirred, some nodding, others glaring at Clara and Theo. Clara tried to speak, her voice trembling. This is a misunderstanding, she said, but the crowd wasn't hers anymore. Theo stepped forward, all bravado. This is art, not evidence, he snapped, but his voice shook. I met his gaze, unflinching. Art doesn't betray, I said, and the room erupted. People surged toward them, some shouting, others filming. Clara's eyes met mine, pleading, but I turned away. Theo pushed through the crowd, his face flushed. My revenge was no outburst. It was their exposure, their shame, their myth shattered. The architect's work was complete. The next morning, the internet was ablaze. Screenshots from my exhibit flooded social media. Hashtags like #ephemeralize and #artbetrayal trending. Clara's Instagram was locked, her comments disabled, but the damage was done. Theo's latest post, a cryptic quote about fleeting moments, was buried under vitriol. Scumbag, one user wrote. You don't deserve her, another said, oblivious to my role. I scrolled through it all, my coffee bitter, my satisfaction cold. The local paper ran a piece, Portland art stars exposed in scandal. I read it twice. Their quotes, Clara's art is vulnerability, Theo's truth is subjective, twisted against them. The gallery issued a statement, distancing itself, claiming ignorance. I didn't care. My focus was their ruin, not the aftermath. Clara called me, her voicemails tearful, incoherent. Please let me explain, she begged in one. It wasn't what you think. I didn't reply. Theo emailed, a single line. You'll regret this. I archived it, another piece of evidence, though I'd need no more. My revenge was public now, unstoppable, a structure too solid to dismantle. I visited my office, sketching idly, my mind replaying the night. Colleagues whispered, their glances heavy with pity. You okay? One asked. I nodded, my face a blueprint of calm. Inside I was steel, my rage spent, my love for Clara a ghost. The architect in me had built this moment, and it stood flawless. Days later, the scandal grew, a fire I'd lit now raging. Clara vanished from public view. Her studio shuttered, her vases unsold. Theo's bookings dried up, galleries dropping him quietly. I heard he'd left Portland, his loft for sale. Their ephemeral bonds was pulled, its legacy tainted. The art world moved on, but their names were poisoned now, their story a cautionary tale. I met the journalist at a cafe, handing over my dossier, every email, every screenshot, every clip. She read it greedily, her pen flying. This is gold, she said, promising a follow-up piece. I nodded, my role anonymous, my revenge untraceable. The architect's touch was invisible, the structure of their downfall seamless. At home, I packed Clara's things, her sketchbooks last. I burned them in the backyard, the pages curling, her drawings of Theo ash. The smoke stung, but I stood firm, my heart a blueprint no longer hers. My revenge was complete, a public crucifixion, their betrayal carved into Portland's memory. I poured a drink, the glass heavy, and toasted my work. Clara and Theo thought they could shape their truth, but I was the architect and I'd built their end. The days after the scandal were quiet, but not peaceful. My home, once a haven of Clara's laughter, was a museum of absence. Her pottery will sat still, her mugs untouched in the cupboard. I walked through the rooms, an architect surveying a ruined structure, assessing what could be salvaged. Nothing, I decided. The Clara I loved was a fiction, her betrayal a crack that ran too deep. My revenge had worked. Her name was mud, Theo's career rubble. But the triumph was hollow, like designing a flawless building no one would inhabit. I read the latest articles. The journalists follow up a scalpel to their legacy. She dug into Theo's past, exposing a pattern. Other artists, other muses, discarded when their shine faded. Clara was just another, her vases props in his game. The piece quoted her, a trembling defense. It was art, not betrayal. The comments were brutal, calling her delusional, a homewrecker. I felt no pity. She'd chosen this, her ephemeral bonds, a monument to her folly. Clara hadn't contacted me since her voicemails. I heard she'd moved to her sister's in Seattle, hiding from the city's scorn. Theo was gone, too. Rumors placing him in LA, chasing a fresh start. I didn't care where they were. My focus was on finishing what I'd started. The architect in me demanded completion, a final act to seal their ruin. I began planning a second exhibit, not public but personal, a private reckoning to cleanse my soul. I sorted through Clara's things, finding a hidden journal. Its pages were a confession, not to me but to herself. Theo sees my art, my heart. My husband builds houses, but Theo builds me. Each word was a betrayal, her love for me rewritten as duty. I burned the journal, the flames a ritual, but the words lingered, fueling my resolve. My revenge wasn't done. It would be eternal, a shadow they'd never escape. I met Diane, the investigator, one last time. She handed me a USB drive, more footage, more emails, a final nail. "You sure about this?" she asked, her eyes searching. I nodded. "It's not about them anymore," I said. "It's about me." She didn't understand, but I did. This wasn't just vengeance. It was reconstruction, a new blueprint for my life, built on their ashes. My new project wasn't for Portland's art crowd, but for Clara and Theo, a private gallery of their shame. I rented a storage unit, transforming it into a stark, clinical space, white walls, cold light, no warmth. I printed their emails, their captions, their stolen moments, mounting them like specimens. Clara's sketches of Theo hung beside his photos, each paired with a timeline. Dates, lies, betrayals. The drone footage played on a loop, a silent accusation. This wasn't art. It was evidence, a forensic display of their deceit. I added my own touch, architectural diagrams, precise and sterile, mapping their affair like a building's flaws. Each connection, every meeting, every glance was a beam, their ephemeral bonds a structure doomed to collapse. I labeled it The Architecture of Betrayal, my title a nod to my craft. The exhibit was for me, but I'd ensure they saw it. I'd send them invitations, anonymous, with photos of the display and a simple note. "You built this." I worked alone, late into the night, my hands steady as I hung each piece. The process was cathartic, each nail a release. I didn't hate Clara anymore. I didn't feel anything. She was a variable in my equation, solved and discarded. Theo was less, a footnote, his charm irrelevant. My revenge had stripped them bare, and this exhibit was the final blueprint, a monument to my control. I contacted a courier, arranging for packages to reach Clara in Seattle and Theo in LA. Each would receive a key to the storage unit, a map, and a single image. Their faces, laughing on the rooftop with my caption, "Truth endures." They'd come, I knew. Curiosity, guilt, or fear would draw them. And when they did, they'd see themselves as I saw them, small, flawed, exposed. I stood back, surveying my work. The architect in me was satisfied. Every line clean, every detail deliberate. This wasn't cruelty. It was justice, a structure that would stand long after their names faded. I locked the unit, the click final, and walked into the night, my heart a blueprint of resolve. The packages went out, each a missile aimed at their piece. I imagined Clara's face, opening the envelope, seeing the key, the map, the photo. Would she cry? Would she rage? Theo, I pictured, would scoff, but he'd come, his ego too bruised to resist. I didn't need to see their reactions. The act was enough. My revenge was a machine now, its gears turning without me. I returned to my life, or what was left of it. Work kept me grounded, designing homes, sustainable, enduring. the opposite of Clara's fleeting bonds. Colleagues tiptoed around me, their pity a weight I ignored. I didn't need their sympathy. I was rebuilding my foundation stronger without her. I sold our house, the memories too heavy, and moved to a minimalist loft, all glass and steel, a space that reflected my new clarity. The journalist called, wanting more. I declined, my story told. But she'd kept digging, uncovering Clara's attempts to relaunch her career in Seattle. A small gallery had taken her vases, unaware of her past. I smiled cold. I'd send them a package, too, anonymously with screenshots, just enough to ensure her failure. Theo's LA ventures were faltering, his reputation a ghost. I didn't need to act. The world was my ally now, their shame a virus spreading. I visited the storage unit weekly, checking the exhibit, ensuring its perfection. No one had come yet, but I was patient. The architect in me understood timing, the power of anticipation. I added one final piece. A mirror, floor to ceiling, at the exhibit's end. They'd faced themselves, their reflections trapped with their lies. It was poetic, precise, a detail that completed the design. My dreams were calm now, no longer haunted by Clara's laugh or Theo's smirk. I was free, my revenge a foundation I'd built upon. The invitations were my last act, a signature on the blueprint. Whatever came next was theirs to bear. 3 weeks later, I checked the storage unit security feed. Clara had come. The camera caught her, pale, her hair pulled back, her eyes wide as she entered. She moved slowly, reading each email, each caption, her hands trembling. At the video, she stopped, her face crumpling. She stood there, minutes ticking by, the drone footage looping her betrayal. When she reached the mirror, she stared, then turned away, her shoulders shaking. She left without touching anything. The key dropped on the floor. Theo came days later, his stride defiant, but his eyes betrayed him. He scanned the walls, his jaw tight, his hands in fists. He lingered at the diagrams, my architectural maps, as if deciphering a code. The video made him flinch, a crack in his armor. At the mirror, he glared, his reflection a stranger. He kicked a wall, leaving a dent, then stormed out, the key tossed aside. I watched the footage, my satisfaction sharp, clinical. They'd seen it, felt it, the weight of their own truth. I didn't need more. The exhibit had served its purpose, a private crucifixion. I dismantled it piece by piece, the walls bare again. The keys I kept, tokens of my victory. The storage unit was empty, but my heart was full, not with love or hate, but with certainty. I designed their reckoning, and it was flawless. I heard Clara had left Seattle, her sister's patience worn thin. Theo's LA dreams were dead, his name blacklisted. Portland's art scene had moved on, their ephemeral bonds, a forgotten scandal. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. My revenge was a structure that stood its shadow long. The architect in me was content, the blueprint complete. I stood in my loft, the city's lights a canvas below. My life was mine again, rebuilt from the ground up. Work thrived. I'd won a contract for a community center, sustainable, enduring, a legacy of my own. Friends returned, their pity gone, replaced by respect for my silence, my strength. I didn't speak of Clara or Theo. They were ghosts, irrelevant. I kept one relic, a single email from Clara, sent weeks after the storage unit. "I'm sorry," it read, "but you destroyed me." I didn't reply. Her apology was ash, her destruction her own design. Theo sent nothing, his silence louder than words. I archived the email, a footnote in my story. My revenge was cruel, yes, but it was art, my art, a structure of truth that outlasted their lies. I'd exposed them, not with fists or shouts, but with precision, their own words their undoing. The architect in me had crafted a masterpiece, not of love but of justice, each beam deliberate, each detail eternal. I poured a whiskey, the glass cold, and toasted the skyline. Clara and Theo were gone, their names dust, their betrayal a lesson. I was free, my heart a blueprint for something new, stronger, sharper, mine. The past was rubble, and I was building again, my future a design only I could shape.